Hello, everyone. I'd love to welcome everyone to this recording, whether you're listening to it on a podcast or maybe you're watching this on YouTube. But I'm really excited today to have Chris Rawlings. Chris first stepped into the e-commerce realm after a spinal injury, inspired him to create a brand of spinal health products to help people alleviate back pain and improve posture. So I cannot wait to hear more about this, Chris. Coming from a tech background and probably one that's more math related than spelling related, Chris built his brand into an international success in the personal care space by designing the products himself and selling them through e-commerce channels alone, which is really cool. With brands reaching out to him more and more for help figuring out Amazon, he founded Judolaunch to help great brands succeed on the highly competitive Amazon marketplace. And since founding Judolaunch in 2017, Chris has facilitated over 1,200 product launches on Amazon, and he's helped hundreds of companies execute the strategies that work to take over their categories and succeed on this marketplace, which is a crazy marketplace. We know this. He is also the founder of 22X Token, a tokenized fund that allowed investors to invest in a large basket of startups with one security token. Like, my mind is a little bit blown right now. I don't even know what that means. But Chris, welcome, and tell us more about you. I'd love to know more about 22X Token. And I'm going to ask you a question. Tell us more about you. And then I've got a couple questions about 22X launch and or token and Judolaunch.
Sure. Sounds good. Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me. For those of you watching on YouTube, you don't know it, but Susie's got a really dope setup with the flowers and the tree and the private label lawyer right behind on the wall. I mean, it's great. So if you're tuning in on a podcast, you got to check out the YouTube.
You're missing out on YouTube. You're not on YouTube.
Yeah. It's good visuals. It's good. I feel ashamed at my filing cabinet behind me right now. I got to get some logos on here, some flowers or something, or wear some lipstick.
You need flowers.
Yeah, the flowers are key. I love wildflowers that come straight out of a field. That's my soft spot. But yeah, thank you for having me. I'm stoked to be speaking with you and addressing your whole beautiful audience here. And so the journey that I took was really that of the journey of a scientist turning into a business person. And I think you may have taken a similar journey, but without scientist being the first one, or maybe it was, I don't know. But before this, we started recording. Susan and I were talking about how I was taken out of spelling so I could join an accelerated math program. So I never learned how to spell. So that's how she knew that I was math focused. But what the transition that I went through, I think, is applicable to almost anyone who would be listening to this podcast, whether they're just starting their private label journey or they're well into it, or they're a seasoned vet looking to get more tactical insights. Because I had a realization after I graduated college with a degree in physics and started doing work in the technical field. I was doing electrical design for solar systems, large scale commercial utility solar systems. And I had this realization when I'm sitting at my desk, as I am now, with my headphones on, as I am now. Not much has changed. Doing electrical design and taking, whatever the next job was that got placed on my desk, and doing it. And, I looked around and decided to take stock of what people were like 10 years, 20 years ahead of where I am in the path that I was in. And the big realization was this: if I continue to rely on my own skills to accomplish anything that I want to accomplish, I will be limited by the amount of work that I can do as an individual. Whereas when I looked around, and especially in my industry, in the solar industry, and also the world, people who are having the biggest impact and the biggest dent in the world were the ones who were skilled at motivating an organization of people to accomplish a thing. And that was the key insight for me. If you look at, there are people who, through their own contributions, make significant impacts on society and humanity. And you can look at Einstein. Einstein just squirreled himself away in his room and made a bunch of discoveries and completely changed the way we think of the physical reality that we live in. But most people that make impacts are organizing a group of people. They're either the president of a whole country, or they founded a company, or they're running a division of a company or an organization, or they're running a nonprofit. But most people who have impact have the ability to understand the mechanics behind human motivation to organize a group, put their heads together, and utilize their strengths and fill in each other's weaknesses as a cooperative organization to accomplish a goal or solve a problem. And so I realized, shoot, I may have just wasted the last 20 years of my life.
But no, you
No, it turned out not to be true, but I realized, wow, I'm really behind.
When you have an aha moment, I think a lot of people tend to do that. We're like, oh man, did I screw up in the past, right? Like, what did I do?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But we know that everything that you've done, everything kind of builds on other things. And if you hadn't had those past experiences, you would probably have never had your aha moment.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you nailed it. Yeah, and I also started reading some business books. I read The 4-Hour Workweek. I read The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. I read Think and Grow Rich. I read a bunch of the classics. And what I would call the classics. But I then embarked on a mission to understand this domain. And I was luckily in a position where the company I was working for is majority owned by my dad. And so I was in a position where people were afraid to say no to me because I was my dad's son. Mm-hmm. And, instead of the typical, like, well, I don't need anything handed to me, type of attitude, which I totally respect that. I just played the cards I was dealt, man. I had a couple aces, and I used them. I wasn't afraid to use them. So I started telling people, because the company had this technology that it wanted to spin, that it was using for its own projects, but it wanted to spin out into its own company. So I started telling people, oh, hey, I'm running this new company now. And people were, like, oh, okay, I guess he's authorized to do that. I totally wouldn't. I totally wasn't. Like, my dad never would have been cool with this, but I got momentum going, by people being afraid to say no to me. So I started this, I spun out the company. I had my girlfriend design a logo, I started signing deals. And and this is another thing I want to drive home to your listeners. I got my ass whipped every day. I was just getting kicked up and down the block, just constantly being embarrassed, not knowing what the heck I was talking about, putting myself into sales meetings where I was just, treated as like this punk kid. And it took a lot of really uncomfortable situations for me to start to understand the mechanics of business and of human motivation and of accomplishing goals as a group and cooperation and all of that. But over the course of 4 years, I did it, and I grew that company to around $700,000 or $800,000 a year run rate with very little resources. I was able to only take part-time resources from other people in the parent company. So after I accomplished that small thing, I decided to strike it out on my own. And that's where the story that you just told everyone started, of starting the spinal health company. And to make sure this isn't a soliloquy of me just talking, I'll leave it at that, but I'll end with saying, because another thing that I think might be relevant to some of the folks who are in the earlier stages of your listeners of private label, aspiring brand owners, is that I made a clean, hard, radical decision. It was at least radical to me. And it was a really tough decision to make, but clean, hard breaks in life can be the most powerful catalysts of change. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting at my desk, running this company, Solstice, and I booked a one-way flight to New Zealand. And the reason was because I knew I had to break from everything in order for me to start fresh and not have this baggage behind me. Mm-hmm. And so I literally started this company up, moved to New Zealand, and before it was even making revenue, I was living the digital nomad life, working from coffee shops, motorcycling from coffee shop to coffee shop, co-working space to co-working space. And I basically put myself in a position where I had to work, because if it didn't work, I had no backup plan. I burned all the ships. So yeah, and that's what embarked me on this path, which led to Judolaunch, which led to 22X, and here we are.
Yeah. So you were in a sink or swim situation.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that that's sort of the story of the entrepreneur, right? Like you hear that a lot and almost a lot of times people that are kind of that true entrepreneur, they put themselves in that position, right? They buy that one-way ticket. They force themselves into that. And some, not everyone is cut out for that. A lot of people they want the predictability of the 9 to 5, the paycheck every 2 weeks. It takes a special kind of person to sort of live that way and to be okay with like, well, I'm not really sure where I'm going to get my next paycheck, but it's going to come. So let me ask you about Judolaunch first. I want to talk about that. Tell me a little bit about how Judolaunch started. And of course, I want to know how you created the name Judolaunch. It's something I always ask people that I interview, is how they created that name, because I'm, big into trademark creation. So let's talk about Judolaunch.
Yeah. So, I created Judolaunch to help brands succeed on Amazon. And since then, we've done over 1,700 launches on the Amazon marketplace and helped hundreds of companies get to top positions and launch their brands on Amazon. It was a gratifying experience to me, especially working with brand owners that were like me, who were like, individuals, kind of striking it out into the jungle, kind of being that machete for them. In the jungle. You're the Amazon jungle.
For the Amazon. I like that.
Right. Yeah. And so the name Judolaunch actually came from, I wanted it to feel like a secret weapon, for folks. Like judo is like something where, it's an art where you use the other party's momentum against them and, sort of effortlessly, manipulate their momentum for your gain. And it's, you can't tell if somebody knows judo just by looking at them. But it's like their secret weapon. And so I wanted it to feel like that. Yeah. So we wanted to be the brand's like secret weapon. And so we started just doing launches, and we were launching companies, Amazon products in different markets around the world. We started in Germany, the UK, France, Italy, and Spain. Then we moved to the US and then Japan. But then we moved from launch, the launch style that we were using ended up being like starting to go out of vogue for a lot of brand categories, where you do like a steeply discounted, like hundreds of units at once to boost sales velocity and start to get visibility. And it really started to go out of vogue, and the effectiveness of it was much more affected by the mechanics of how you set up a launch. Like it now has to be 10-day launch. You want increasing sales velocity. The price point can't be 90% off or 99% off or free anymore. Those folks can't leave reviews anymore. So it's getting more and more restricted. And there's still plenty of companies that do launches, especially in cosmetics, supplements, really super high competitive categories and high volume, high margin categories. Lots of launches still getting done. But because of the way the industry was going, we opened up into other services as well. So we started doing listing optimization, and then the bread and butter for us now is doing PPC management for customers' accounts, which is its own science. a very deep science, and enterprise account management, where we essentially manage the entire Amazon presence of a brand. And that's usually for larger brands, medium to large brands.
Interesting. So tell me a little bit about token, or the 22X token.
Oh yeah. It's funny that you ask about that, because a lot of people kind of skim over that because it just seems daunting. Well, so Judolaunch engaged with a tech accelerator called 500 Startups.
Yes, I've heard of this.
Mm-hmm. And 500 Startups is an accelerator. It's one of the top 5 accelerators in the world. Mm-hmm. They engaged with us in 2017. They invest in you, and you have to move into their location and study with other startups like live. And it's kind of like boot camp, like startup business boot camp. You learn a lot. It's very stressful, and there's, you know, an enormous amount of pressure that gets put on you to grow super, super fast. But it's an insane learning experience, and it really links you in with an amazing network as well. And while I was there were 32 companies in the batch that I was in. And a batch is like a class, because it's kind of like college, but for startups instead of people. So 32 companies in the batch, and we self-organized to release this token. My friend Jake and I were kind of like just spitballing over drinks in the very beginning of the batch, saying, hey, this crypto thing is going crazy. What if we created a token? And the SEC was all over it. Crypto was booming. There was more money being raised for early stage startups via ICOs, initial coin offerings, than traditional VC, which was like blowing people's minds. We're like, what is going on? I don't think that's the case anymore. But this was during, like, you know, an explosion of this bubble of ICOs. And so we said, well, what? And the SEC was saying, hey, these might be securities. You guys might be skirting around securities law. This may be illegal. They were starting to crack down on some tokens that were obviously securities. And so we said, what if we made a token that was a security straight up, and we registered it with the SEC as a security, and we issued it as a way for people to invest in early stage pre-vetted tech startups. Because, you know, your normal average Joe doesn't get access to the next Uber deal or the next, you know, tech startup deal. But we saw an opportunity there, and yeah, so we raised a significant amount of capital for about 20 businesses through this token offering that was a security, and it's still live and tradable now as we speak. And each token represents equity in all of this basket of startups, so it's more diversified, giving it, you know, more safety and security for people who purchase the token.
That's really cool. You're sort of a smart cookie. You might not have passed spelling, but
no, I failed that. Definitely couldn't spell for my life.
Your spelling classes, but obviously your strengths lie in different areas. And what I think is what's kind of blowing my mind about this is that I don't really understand cryptocurrency myself. And so I kind of feel like I'd love to get into like asking you more questions about that. But in some ways I'm like, I don't even really know what I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it like, it's kind of,
you don't know.
It's really kind of hard for me to dig into that, but I feel like you know so much about PPC and listing optimization and things like that. Are people that are in private label and maybe specifically selling on Amazon. That's really the people that are going to be listening to to this interview, and would love to know more about that. And so, of course, you know, I would love to know what is one of the biggest mistakes that you see people making with their listings, and when they try to do PPC on their own, because I definitely think I think that there's a science to it. And I'm not someone who, like, if I had an Amazon listing, I would be very intimidated to get into the back end and look at what the data is telling me to be able to figure out what I'm supposed to do in the future. Right. And data numbers generally don't lie, right? They tell us a lot. But at the end of the day, a lot of us don't know how to interpret that. So I guess my question is maybe twofold. Like, what are some of the biggest, mistakes that you see people making in terms of interpretation? And second, what can they do? What can they learn from that to be able to make the right decisions going forward, specifically with PPC?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. And you're right that most people are kind of flying by the seat of their pants, but it is a science, and it should be treated as a science. You could manage the PPC account of a completely different language that you speak not a single word of, and manage it completely fine, because it's all about the data. You don't even have to know what the search term is, but you know that it's getting impressions and a good click-through rate and a solid conversion and a low A cost. So you start spending more on it. When it comes to PPC, it's all about creating a positive reinforcing feedback loop. People operate PPC, when you talk about the biggest mistake, people operate PPC in like a vacuum, but it really needs to be incorporated as part of a larger strategy and a larger whole. And this is what we do for the brands that we engage with, on an ongoing basis, is we help them set up this system and we monitor and run it for them, where they're taking the insights that they get from their PPC and they're incorporating that into their listing optimization and their content creation, their EBC, and everything else. And their any external promotions they're doing or ranking campaigns that they're doing as well. And that the results of all of that and the conversion difference that you see gets incorporated into the PPC that you spend on, as well. So it's all related in one large system, and you can't operate any one piece of your Amazon business in a vacuum. With PPC, the most important thing is the simplest way, if you're trying to do PPC yourself, is to set up for each product 3 campaigns. You set up a research campaign where you set up a discovery campaign, which this is like an auto campaign. What Amazon calls an auto campaign, where they choose what to show your product for and where to show your product. And they'll show it for thousands of keywords. And they're choosing those keywords based on the keywords that are in your listing and in other listings in the space. And their own algorithm is deciding on the keywords. You then, after letting that run for a number of weeks, you download the data from that and you filter out the keywords and search terms that are doing the best. And you put those into another campaign that you call the research campaign. And you try to get a couple dozen keywords in this research campaign, where you then test your hypothesis. You see, okay, I see from the Amazon auto campaign that this initial indications show that this keyword seems to be highly relevant and have significant number of impressions and a good conversion for my listing. Therefore, I'm going to see what this is all about. I'm going to test it further. So you put it in this research campaign, and you're really looking to do a broad match and phrase match with this keyword. So you see what variations, what iterations, what different versions of this keyword, in terms of the specific search term relating to it, are actually performing best. So say I did an automatic search term campaign for a baby bottle that I'm selling. And Amazon tests thousands of keywords, and I see that BPA-free baby bottle is one of the top performing keywords for mine. So I put BPA-free baby bottle into this research campaign. That's tier 2 out of these 3 tiers. After that runs for a couple of weeks, then I see, because I had it in broad match and phrase match. Well, BPA-free baby bottle for toddlers is actually by far generating the most sales. And BPA-free water bottle for, kids 12 months and under, didn't generate any because of my specific mechanics of my bottle's design. Then you know the exact search term. So you went from not knowing anything to having a hypothesis that you test out in this research campaign to then knowing the exact search term that's performing, and you put that into this third tier, and that's the performance campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Performance campaign is where you keep all of the keywords that you know are performing really well. And so in our case, this would be BPA-free baby bottle for toddlers. And you keep getting more and more search terms in this performance campaign, and then you age them, because the longer the campaign is running for, the more Amazon respects it and gives it visibility, and the greater score Amazon's internal algorithm gives it for showing up at the top of page 1. And that's it. That's the entire process. You continue to run that. While you're running that, you're blacklisting keywords that are performing really badly in your auto campaign and your research campaign, and you're continuing to graduate keywords up to the performance campaign. And if some of them stop performing well in the performance campaign, you blacklist those, or remove them, or lower the bids. And on a daily and weekly and monthly basis, you continue to run this process and manage it. And those insights that you get, you then incorporate into the rest of the business. So you find out, oh, wow, I didn't realize that moms shopping for toddlers were really resonating with my product. I got to put that into the title.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe right in the beginning of the title.
Mm-hmm.
You know, BPA-free water bottle for toddlers might be your new title, the new beginning of your title, and the back end, the bullet points, etc. And then, you know, that change in the listing will have some impact on how people interact with your listing and what words convert, and hence will change the dynamics of the PPC system you set up. And so this is a constant feedback loop. It continues to run over and over and over again. And this is what we run for sellers that engage with us. But you can run it yourself if you've got the time and you have the smarts.
And you know how to do it, right? So do you all use proprietary software to do this, or are you all doing it? Do you all do it manually, or both? Or
it's half and half for us. Yeah, we use our own software, and we also manage it manually with human beings. So yeah, it's we kind of have the best of both worlds, because we have some level of automation for bid adjustments, and then we also have you know, a human's touch and human intuition, which is still important in PPC today.
Right. And it seems like with this keyword optimization, it's imperative to stay on top of it and to change and be ready to change, because Amazon's obviously a super dynamic platform as well. Mm-hmm. When people come to you, Chris, and they're like, we need help with this, like how bad are they? I mean, I could see people just really, and I mean, people know it's important, but I think that they're failing big time. That's kind of what, you know, that's what I would be seeing, is that people are probably not doing it right at all.
Yeah, you're right.
It's major sales because they're failing to properly optimize their keyword.
Yep. That's so true. I mean, it's rare. We run into companies that are running a very professional process, but it's very rare. Most companies are just kind of flying by the seat of their pants, not running a really pro process, not managing it on a day-to-day basis the way they should. And when you do that, there's an opportunity cost to it. You know, you're losing out by your average cost of sale being higher, by you not getting these keyword insights, by you not progressing over time and getting better and narrowing down that ideal customer that should be the one seeing your product. And a lot of sellers just leave it up to Amazon. They just let an automatic campaign run. You know, the kind of bare minimum is doing this auto campaign and adding negative keywords to it to remove the bleeders, as we call them, the ones that are actually like costing you money and not generating any sales. And, you know, Amazon wants to make money. They make money on the clicks, whether or not I'm not bored. I think I'm lacking oxygen. I need to open up a window or take a deep breath.
Do some yoga.
Yeah, some yoga would be great right now. The restorative yoga, the kind where you just take a nap. So that's the bare minimum. Just having an auto campaign where you add in the negative keywords that are bleeding you money.
That's interesting. And I think that is something that people that they're just not thinking about, like where are they actually could be, potentially losing money.
Yep.
You've mentioned, and we've kind of talked about keywords that maybe are words that you don't even understand, right? Like they're foreign language words.
Yeah.
I'd like to know a little bit or talk a little bit about the difference in the EU and the US market, because I think this is important for people to be talking about and to be aware of. And it's sort of top of mind for me because of my interview that I actually just had with someone else who's specifically in the EU market. But I'd love to know sort of your thoughts on the differences in those opportunities in those markets, and best practices when it comes to keyword optimization if US based sellers do want to go into the EU market.
Yeah. Yep. So the EU market, it's interesting because I don't know what the exact numbers are, so don't hold me to this, but this is like,
don't worry,
roundabout. Yeah. So Amazon in the US last year did around 250 billion in retail revenue. Yeah. Around 250 billion.
Right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Dude, these numbers are ridiculous. Yeah. So it's $250 billion, which is half of all e-commerce revenue in the States. In Germany, the next biggest market, it's something on the order of 40 to 50 billion, I believe, somewhere on that order of magnitude. So it's significantly less than in the US, and that's the next biggest one. Then, you continue to go down the line. It's Germany, then Japan, then the UK, then France, Italy, Spain, and then all the rest. And so what the basic game is, if you're in the US and you want to expand into the EU, you have the opportunity to be a big fish in a small pond instead of a small fish in a big pond, which can get gobbled up.
Right.
And this actually saved my brand when competition went wild and margins just thinned out completely in the US in our space.
Your supplements brand?
The health brand, because we were able to launch in Germany and the UK, and we had much better margins there. And so that ended up being kind of our cash cow. And it allowed us to continue competing in the US. Because it allowed us to.
People are really intimidated about going into foreign markets, and Amazon is, Amazon says it's easy, but I think that there are still like a lot of moving parts that we need to think about, right? Right? I mean, that seems like a big thing that people need to think about. So what are, do you have any best practices or thoughts on going into the EU market, just from your experience or what you're seeing from people that you work with?
Yeah, there are. I would say the main thing that I would say is just get people to do the things right. It's not that expensive. Right. Okay. Yeah, it's not that expensive. So everything that you're saying that makes people feel like it's a daunting task is language barrier, tax issues, logistics. Getting a translated listing is so cheap. A couple $100 to get a really professional, translated, locally optimized listing. Getting someone to do your VAT. There's lots of services for it. Simply VAT, VAT Global. The trademarks, you got someone right here who can help you with. Hello. And then, logistics, international logistics companies like Flexport, specialize in this. You don't have to, it's not up to you to be the master of how all the mechanics work.
Right. It's impossible.
And if you really want, it's impossible. Yeah. And that's part of what you learn as being an entrepreneur, as you grow into your story, is that you can't be good at everything and you have to delegate. And you really want to spend most of your time doing what you're best at and what you're strong at. Because if you're spending most of your time on what you're weakest at or what you don't know well, you're going to have much less of an impact than if you did a lot more of what you did well and delegated things that you don't do well to people who do them well. And
have you read The Big Leap?
No, I haven't.
That's a really good book, and it talks about I think it's by Gay Hendrickson, and he talks about, working, how important it is, especially as entrepreneurs, that you kind of allow yourself to take that step back. And, it's as entrepreneurs, we don't love, we like learning and we like doing different things, but at the end of the day, we have our zone of competency, right? And we have our zone of genius. And we really need to get ourselves into the position where we're working on within our zone of genius, and let people who can actually do the translations, who can, do these certain things, like let them do it. Be ready to outsource and allow yourself to be comfortable with that. I have struggled with that. I mean, as an entrepreneur, since I started and just, allowing myself to kind of let the control go, like let other people help me. There are people who are way better at a lot of other things than I am. And that really talks about that, like working in your zone of genius, letting other people do the other things. And I think that you mentioned that a minute ago about, find good people to do the things.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, that's not just about expanding into Europe. Like you said, that relates to everything. Yeah.
It's everything. Yeah. It's a great book. And make sure you pick it up. I think, you mentioned some of the books that you like or that you'd read. And I think that it kind of fits in that genre. I think that you would probably like it. So. Yeah.
I've heard of it, but I haven't downloaded it yet. If there's an audiobook, I can read it, because I only do audiobooks now.
That totally counts as reading. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I say, like, I'll tell someone, like, oh, I read this book, and they'll, on audio, and they'll be like, that's not reading.
Yeah. You consume it.
I listen to it, whatever. Yeah. Consume the book, whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm sure it's on audio. So make sure you get, and it's really short. Like, I bet the audio.
Oh, nice. Love those.
So.
Oh, wow. That's really short.
I'm not guessing, but I would guess that it's short. Like, I can't imagine it being really long, because it's it's a small book.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Pick it up.
Right on.
So one thing that I'd love to touch on also, and this is something that I have struggled with, and I think that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, and I don't know, I could see people in the Amazon space specifically who are, people who are doing e-commerce struggle with is cash flow management.
Oh, yeah.
Said, I had asked you in the past, what have you learned about your business in this past year that you think that you can improve for in the future? And you mentioned cash flow management.
Yes.
And I would love for you to talk about this, because I feel like it's an issue that a lot of us deal with, and we don't like to think about cash flow, and we like to work on our business. And then, like, we wake up one day and we're like, holy shit, we're having cash flow issues here. So let's talk about cash flow management, maybe what you've learned this past year, and, what you're doing to implement to try to improve going forward.
Yep. Yeah. This is one of the biggest learnings that I had to kind of learn over and over and over again, actually, is the importance of cash flow management. And there's a deeper principle and philosophy, I think, underlying that in general, which is detailed planning and forecasting in general. Can be cash flow, but it can also be other KPIs or key performance indicators that are unrelated to cash, but are related to the drivers of the business, and forecasting those and being able to affect those. Because there is a difference between what they call vanity metrics, which are metrics that just kind of make you feel good. Oh, this is what my sales were for the month. Yay for me.
What we want to see, right?
Yeah, right. It makes you feel good.
But we're like, oh, it's coming in. But then it's like,
coming in. Then when it's not, you're like, what the heck? So you need to have, so you need to have some kind of something that can be affected by your actions directly, which is why you need to go like a level or 2 or 3 down. So instead of just saying top line revenue, we're seeing units sold, and from units sold, we're seeing what channels they're coming from, and from what channels they're coming from, we're seeing what we're ranking in each of those channels. Maybe that's just one driver. Okay, if my organic ranking is the primary driver of my revenue, for these products, I should be tracking that in the same place that I'm tracking my top line metric, my revenue, because then that's showing me what drives it. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I can take action on. I can say, how much did I spend to rank that much in promotions and PPC and whatnot? Is it still worth it for me to continue spending that on an ongoing basis? And so I think, and I'm still learning this lesson in all honesty, but what has become clear to me is that weekly and monthly cash flow projections that you update every week, projecting out and also filling in backwards, retrospectively, are extremely important for you to be able to make good decisions in the present moment. There's a book that's kind of crash course on this for folks that aren't doing anything at all, which is great, called Profit First. It kind of shows, it made me feel less bad because it was talking about how, a vast majority of these small business owners are really kind of flying by the seat of their pants and are just doing bank account bookkeeping, where if they have money in their bank account, they'll spend it, and if they don't, they panic, and yeah, right. And so it's tough because it's kind of a different way of structuring your thinking in your mind. And the beautiful thing is, when you track out these things, the financial metrics, the top line revenue, the KPIs, your keyword ranking units sold, whatever else you want to track. And for, Judo, it's completely different. We're tracking totally different things. We don't sell units of anything. Then you can make decisions now that will affect your business 4 months from now. Whereas
not just
right now, right. Yeah. And plus right now, because that's happening anyway, you just don't see it. Where you are in your business now was affected by what you did 4 months ago, 8 months ago, a year ago, but you just aren't realizing it. Like the connection between the past, the present, and the future isn't there when you're not tracking these things and forecasting them. And so just the exercise itself forces you to make better decisions. And it also allows you to exert some kind of discipline when you think, oh, it looks like I can afford this new marketing agency or this new service or whatever. But actually, I can see if I subscribe to that now, 3 months from now, we'll be out of money. And so actually, I can't afford it, even though it seems like I can based on my
at this moment
bank account balance. Yeah, right. Exactly. So yeah, that was one of my biggest lessons learned, and also something that I learned from other businesses, because we engage with, sellers ourselves. And I've also, been on a lot of these podcasts and, spoken with, like, for instance, Corin Woodmass, who sells Amazon businesses. He's the FBA broker.
Yes.
And and so he's told me about his woes dealing with companies, and how most of them don't do really good, cash flow management, and they kind of have to help them, clean their books up and clean up their practices. But
we made $1 million this year, but then they spent like $999,999 on
exactly. Yeah.
Products, and it's like at the end of the day, it's like, okay, are we actually really in the red here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's
that's a lot of businesses. That's a lot of them.
This is actually really kind of a fascinating topic to me, because, as a service provider and having my own practice, I see cash flow up and down. It's like a roller coaster, right? And it's hard because, I might not get a new client for a couple of weeks, or maybe I'll, think, okay, I think I'll go on vacation for a few weeks. Do you know what I mean? Or maybe I want to implement this great, or, hire this, PR agency. And
exactly.
Those are big expenses. And it's really something like that is hard to see. In your head, you think, oh, I'm being really smart because I can say, well, is there going to be any ROI here? Well, you can't predict the ROI on something like that anyway. And at the end of the day, when you're incurring a really significant expense like that, will that impact you in 3 months? It's really, really hard. How are you doing that? Like, how are you learning and how are you extrapolating that information so that you can look 3 to 6 months down the road, whether or not do you have a big old spreadsheet or are you
Yes. Yeah, that's the simplest and best way to do it. There are all kinds of tools out there, but the best thing to do is utilize a simple spreadsheet, and it has the metrics in the first column. Just row by row, there's another metric. It's, ordered revenue, units sold, keyword ranking, conversion rate, stock of inventory, and everything in one column. And then across the top, you have the weeks. And every week you fill in that actual information, or you have a VA do it. and you forecast out what you think it'll be, but you fill in the real metrics as they come in. And this becomes like a living sheet that shows the past and the present and the future. And that's what allows you to make better decisions, because you look at the past, you see, okay, I see this pattern. This product's sales are falling. They'll probably continue to fall until we get to Q4 and November. And then they'll rise as they did last year. And so that will generate this much revenue, and this is how much we'll have in our bank. And so then you can see, exactly how much money you'll have in your bank, 6 months from now, based on what you expect to happen. And it sounds kind of daunting, but it's actually not. Like, you sit down for yourself, give yourself 30 minutes to like sketch out, a spreadsheet, source all the numbers and pop them in there, and you'll see, oh, this wasn't that bad. And also I could teach someone to do this for nothing. It takes like a couple minutes a week or something. And then again, each month. And that practice itself gives you so much clarity about what is happening in your business and what is going to be happening in your business based on the decisions you're making now.
Yeah, I love that, because it will really help people make smart decisions and not, as opposed to like kind of, hoping for the best.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's me, dude. I've done it so many times. Like especially when you have to be positive as an entrepreneur and a little crazy, sometimes a little reckless even. Because I don't think normal people do this. Yeah. And so entrepreneurs kind of can have some of these tendencies that get them into trouble, including myself, of, seeing the opportunity, but not the risk, and spending money when it's there, thinking that, it's, a world of abundance, every dollar I spend will come back.
The cash flows.
Or fivefold. Yeah. The cash flows, baby.
Yeah. It's energy.
Yeah. And so right. Totally, dude. Exactly. And that's what kind of can get us into trouble, because that attitude, as great as it is as a mindset to help you be bold and get out there and walk into that jungle, can also keep you from seeing reality clearly. And so the balance is needed, where you have like this ability to see the future and opportunity and potential and vision, and your creative mind is crafting the world that you want to manifest. And then this other side has to balance that out, of understanding the reality of the current world that you're in. And that the fusion of those two is what allows you to build the bridge between the now reality and the vision of what you want your life and what you want the world, or what you want the future to hold. I think this grounding in reality portion is the one that most entrepreneurs are missing, if you ask me.
Right. They're a little challenged in that area.
Yeah, to say the least. Yep, you could say that.
I feel like, though, you have to be somewhat of an optimistic person at heart, right, to be an entrepreneur, and so you look at things like, the money will come, or I will figure this out, or whatever.
Right.
I'm gonna manifest it.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Yeah. And then when you run into cash flow problems, you just panic.
Right.
That's how it goes. It's just cycles of, manic, opportunistic, positivity, and panic, fear, and dread.
Right. It's like,
And dude, I've lived that too many times. I'm done with that, honestly. There's a balance that can be had. And after running into through this accelerator 500 startups and another accelerator engaged with SOSV, so many times companies that actually do have a healthy attitude about this, and investors who have to have a healthy attitude about this because that's their only job.
That's their job. Yeah.
Yeah. I know that it's possible. And so not everyone out there is flying by the seat of their pants. And the ones that really make it actually have the ability to, like I said, fuse their clear vision of what's real now with their vision of what they want to see manifested in the future.
Mm-hmm. And they're actually looking at those balance sheets and and they're making the monetary projections, so they're not out of cash.
Yeah, or have someone who is.
Yeah.
Or have who is, that's that. Bookkeeper is, part-time bookkeeper is not expensive.
Right. Well, let's talk about you. Okay, I want you to tell me a little bit about this. You mentioned one of the communities that you're involved in. I think it was SSOV.
SOSV.
Yes. Yeah. And that's like a startup community, and also 500 startups. I'm curious about these organizations. I've heard of 500 startups. Yeah, I haven't heard of the other one. And I think that this is kind of a good segue into talking a little bit about community. And you mentioned that you think that this is something that is, something that's generally missing from the business sphere. So let's talk about that a little bit. If you don't mind to tell me about your involvement in those two communities.
I'm happy.
Yeah,
definitely. I am a massive believer in community in both business and life. I saw this documentary a couple of years ago. I think it was just called Happy or Be Happy. And it was analyzing the happiest people around the world and what unites them. And there were only, a couple factors, and one of them was strong community. And that led me to actually live in a co-op where in San Francisco, where everyone in the house, there was 30 of us in a big giant Victorian mansion. We all shared the cost of our food and all of our living expenses together and pooled in together so that everyone shared everything. Shared the benefit of everything. Yeah, it's called Ubuntu.
What's it called?
Yeah, Ubuntu. There are a lot of articles written about it, but there are quite a few co-ops in San Francisco that have similar models. But this one is a couple
of years. I didn't live in one of those places. I probably should have. I would have saved more money.
Oh yeah. It's the one I was in was in Haight, in Lower Haight, in right next to Alamo Square.
When did you live there? When were you there?
2017. All of 2017 during 500 startups. Yeah.
Okay. I was there like 2010 through like 2012, so it's a while, but long time ago.
Yeah. So that experience was amazing and formative for me, because it taught me how important community is. I mean, the beautiful thing of a group of people being together and having goals together is that they're way more efficient than a single person because of what we were saying before. Each person has the ability to utilize their strengths more often than their weaknesses. Mm-hmm. So the person that's good at cleaning and they just love cleaning and tidying up, and that's, there
and they are people like that.
There are, they exist. They clean, and the people that make art and music can make the place worth living in by filling it with beautiful art and music. And the folks that are numbers oriented can keep track of the books. And that's how we operated, just like that. People who are good at organizing events made awesome events and parties. And people who are good at cooking for the whole house all the time. So you end up getting the so many more benefits out of life, and in business we'll get into is the same than you would if you were trying to strike it alone. Mm-hmm. Now the trade-off is you have less control.
Right.
So that is the key here, is that, you know, you are, there's this awesome quote that I saw, hesitant to say where I saw it, but I'll say it. It was at Coachella, I think in 2012. Yeah, don't judge. This is in 2012 too, so it was kind of a different Coachella back then.
No judgment zone.
But yeah. And so this quote was on a gigantic 3-story tall snail that was moving around the landscape. And it said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that quote struck me deeply because it has a really big meaning in my life, because most of the years of my life, I felt very solo and isolated and lone wolf style. Like when I was a kid, I was really nerdy, really nerdy. I'm still quite nerdy, but I'm still very nerdy. But when I was a kid, I was like nerdy in a bad way. Like it wasn't cool at all to be a nerd. And I didn't have very close friends, and I read a lot of books, and I played in the woods, like, you know, and I really felt that it was all about my own ability. Like anything that I wanted in life, or I wanted to manifest in life, or to build or create or to accomplish, was based solely on my own abilities. And I remember working in like group projects in school, being so frustrated because the group couldn't make decisions and was always chatting about things. And like, I felt that I knew the answers, and it was slowing me down to have to explain it to other people. And so I always thought, I'm not good in groups. Like all the sports I played were solo. I did a lot of longboarding, surfing, snowboarding, inline skating, biking, kayaking, stuff like that. And I hope there's somebody in your audience who's like really connecting with this right now. And hopefully this will help somebody. But this quote rang so true to me because it was right when I was finding this out, right after I graduated college and was working as an electrical engineer and starting to, you know, realize that I needed to understand the mechanics of human organizations, not just the mechanics of the solar system. And so this is the trade-off. So in a group, it feels slower. And because you have to, you can't just force the path that you think, or maybe you think you know is right, onto the group. You can't control these other people. These are independent minds. You need to, it's the difference between steering a little dinghy where you're holding the engine and you're literally like flipping it back and forth. If I want to go left, I go like this. Or if I want to go right, I go like this. If I want to go left, I go like this. Simple. I control my hand controls the engine. That's it. It's the difference between driving that little dinghy, which you can zip all around, you know, go, you know, super quick and very agile, and driving a 100-foot sailboat, where that cannot be operated alone.
Right.
That can only be operated as a group. And you might have your hand on the steering wheel, but someone else has their hands on the sails. Someone else has their hands on the rudder, and someone else has their hands on the jib. And yet someone else even has to, you know, keep the ship afloat and operate the solar system and all of that. And you might not be able to steer that ship, you know, back and forth just like you could the dinghy, where you were so used to that absolute control. But that thing could cross the freaking Atlantic Ocean. You're not going to cross the Atlantic Ocean in a little dinghy. You might be able to go fast and zip around, but you can't cross the Atlantic Ocean in that. And that's the same in life and in business. If you want to accomplish great things, you can't be driving a dinghy. You'll never cross the Atlantic Ocean. And you might be used to it because and maybe you're not, but if you're like me, you know, the way that I was programmed growing up, I was used to that, having complete control, being able to move fast, thinking I was smarter and not having time to explain, the inner workings of my mind to other people. And I feel I'm still in the process of understanding the deep science of how to inspire, motivate, and organize a group of people to actually accomplish something great.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the by far the best way to accomplish something great, is by working as a group and as a community.
Mm-hmm. I foresee you accomplishing something great. Like, I mean, I feel like you already have, of course, but what are you seeing, Chris, on your horizon, like in the next 2 to 5 years for you and your business?
Yeah. Well, so thank you for asking that, because that's a question that I like to answer, and that I don't get asked very often. And I do go back to my why a lot, especially in the last year, because I've had a really rough year in the last year, both personally and professionally. Got hit by a lot of bricks in the chest,
mm-hmm.
and really had to have my resilience tested. And I'm still there. I'm still in the storm, so to speak, and have been dealing with a lot of tough challenges, which has forced me to go back and reassess my why. And because I hit, when it rains, it pours, and I'm sure this has happened to you in your life, Susie. But I had the end of a long-term relationship, a 5-year relationship. I had a hostile investor try to take over my business, and almost do it. I had suffice to say, I had a number of really big, challenging life events happen,
personal and professional,
last 10 months. Yeah. And so that forces you to reassess your why. And to me, I've felt over the past couple of years in these different ventures that I was in the process of sharpening the axe, so to speak. Like, I really got to look this up, because I've said this quote so many times and I still don't know who it was. It was either George Washington or Abraham Lincoln or some founding father said, if you gave me an hour to chop down a tree, I would spend 50 minutes sharpening my axe. And so I felt that, I have been through these experiences of running Solstice, of running Judolaunch, of running the brand, of founding 22X, that I am sharpening the axe. And in the process, learning, like we said, this skill and this art of solving great challenges and, building great communities to solve problems, so that I can solve greater and greater problems. So, if I'm totally honest, do I want to be helping people sell stuff online for the rest of my life? No. I'm very gratified and happy to be helping brand owners achieve their dreams right now, but that's not my life calling. And I do feel that this experience to me is sharpening my axe to be able to work on tougher challenges that matter to humanity, that matter to the universe, that matter to my own personal why, my own mission of doing something that helps us to at least put a brick in the wall of human knowledge about ourselves, about the basic nature of reality, about the universe, about all of the complexity that we see, on this beautiful planet. And then also to help improve things, to minimize suffering of human beings, to make people more enlightened, more joyous, more present, more happy. These are some of the challenges that I, care about. And this sharpening of the axe, I believe, will lead me down those paths. But right now, in the present, the next couple steps that are in front of me that I can see are continuing to engender with the people in my companies a sense of community, a sense of meaning, for both the people in the company and, the customers that we serve. And working together, cooperating, utilizing this vehicle as a tool for personal growth, and utilizing our people as a tool for growth of the organization. And also in the next couple steps in front of me, which I think we alluded to like earlier on, is I definitely need to rebalance life, because I've been redlining this business thing for a long time now and working 12 to 16-hour days all the time, neglecting other important elements of life, like relationships, like, time in nature, like time alone and blank space, because that's where creativity emerges from emptiness. And so I'd like to honestly get to the point where I can refocus on living a balanced life for a while too, and sort of heal from this past really tough year for me too. So that I might have gotten a little too real, a little too vulnerable there, but that's the honest answer.
Great. I think it's great. And I think that integrating, like I'm big on meditation. I am a huge believer in meditation.
Same here. I'm going to do it after this call. I have it scheduled with myself. I'm going to sit out in the grass behind my my office.
Yeah, it's something I feel like we should have been taught when we were like 4 or 5 years old. It's like, why
there's so many things should have been taught. Dude, you're so right. That like how to be a happy, healthy person is not part of our teaching. What the heck is up with that? It's so weird.
It's not at all. It's all about.
We skip the important stuff and right to the unimportant stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Deal with that, man.
You need to work on that, and then the getting out in nature, and that's something that I always like tell people. Like nature, being out in Mother Nature has so many healing properties, and people who live in highly congested areas where they're not able to get out as much, like I think they suffer from that. And
yeah, I agree. I see it.
That's a huge reason I live where I do, is because I don't like highly congested areas, and I love having easy access to nature. Like boom, like walk outside.
You and I would get along. I hope we get to hang out sometime, Susie, because I'm the same way. I lived in Shanghai all of last year, and it degraded my soul.
Couldn't do it.
It killed me, dude.
Yeah.
It killed me. That's why I'm back in New Jersey now, because I was traveling the world basically the last 4 years. New Zealand, Norway, Greece, Philippines, China. Like I was all over the world, Eastern Asia, Central America. I was all over the place the last 4 years, and I had to come back to my home nature state, especially during this tumultuous time of these challenges I've been experiencing, so that I could heal in nature. And people don't think of Jersey as nature. You're in Kentucky, you think of Kentucky as nature, but Central Jersey is actually, Susie and I were talking before we started this interview. I did a biking tour of the bourbon distilleries in Kentucky. And it reminded me of New Jersey, Central Jersey, actually, surprisingly, because it's the garden state and there is a lot of nature here. Yeah. But yeah, we would get along. We should really hang out. We have
yoga,
a lot of
harness or chi.
Dude, that sounds beautiful.
Yeah. I think that's, getting out. Like one of the first times I ever felt like I was in a meditative zone was when I was kayaking. And because my brain has always been very full of chatter, right? Like, like always, like I'm thinking. And after I did that, I was so in the zone. I was like, oh my gosh, my brain just feels like I can't even describe it, just having that where I didn't have all that crazy internal chatter going on in my brain. Like I was so focused. I was so in the zone. Like even like when I would do yoga, like I would think about things that I had to do the next day, and I had to get some laundry done, and I had to send that email back, and oh my gosh, did I call Bill back? And all constant. But when I had that experience, it's like, okay, that was like being in a true meditative zone. And so like this past year, I was like, I really have to learn, I kind of have to learn how to meditate. And so I did like this online training thing from a company called Ziva Training. I don't know if you've heard Ziva Online Meditation. And it was great because it teaches you mindfulness and meditation and some manifesting. So it was really, really good experience. So highly recommend it. But if you're already kind of meditating, if you've already been integrating it into your life, like it might be a little basic for you, but it was good. I liked it as a very amateur person picking up meditation.
Nice. That's a good tidbit for the listeners out there, because I mean, meditation, transcendental meditation, which is a style I haven't tried yet, but I've heard a lot about, is attributed, Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater, which is one of the top, I think it's the biggest hedge fund in the world, at least one of the biggest. He attributes his success to transcendental meditation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that says a lot.
Viewers, meditate. If you take integrate meditation, learn how to do this. Like it can be life.
Another hack, another hot tip that I would add to that, the meditation thing, is okay, this is going to sound very specific, but it has been transformative for me in both physical and mental health. And that is running 2 miles every morning without music, including 3 sprints. So I just want to say that one more time because it's a lot of stuff. So running 2 miles every morning without music, incorporating 3 sprints.
Within the 2 miles?
Within the 2 mile.
Okay.
Yeah. And each sprint should be about 15 to 20 seconds, which feels like an eternity when you're sprinting. And it's better if it's uphill. And the reason I need to get deeper into the science of this. All I know is that it works. But I do know that sprinting is considered high intensity interval training, HIIT. And there are all kinds of studies about the benefits of HIIT training and its effects on your hormone regulation, hormone production, and the aging of your cells and the aging of your body. And the running itself, there's so many studies on cardiovascular exercise and how it affects the brain and how it affects the body. Waking up every morning, having my shoes and my shorts like ready for me to go right into, ready right there, right outside my bedroom. First thing I do. Sometimes I brush my teeth first. Most of the time I don't. I just go right out. And the sprints are a super important part of this. It transformed my body and it transformed my brain.
I bet you're not hungry for a while after you do it.
Yeah, that's actually true.
Yeah.
I never thought of that as a thing, but that is the case. And which can lead you into time restricted eating or intermittent fasting, which also has a lot of excellent benefits and is being studied heavily right now. But the sprinting does something to your mind and body. You can feel it. And I actually got shredded. Like my body lost all of its fat and gained muscular toning without working out at all, just from sprinting. My pecs grew, my abs got completely cut up and defined, even my arms and my shoulders.
Okay, show your guns. If you're watching on YouTube, everyone needs to see the guns. Welcome to the gun show.
Yeah. Well, is it that way? Which way? Which is the gun show? Is it that way?
I just watched Anchorman again for.
Oh, nice. Milk was a bad choice. 999.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Good
yeah,
show.
if you're watching on YouTube, you're probably just you either turned it off or you're cracking up right now.
Right. Yeah. And if you're in that section, I'll probably go to my bloopers. I'm gonna do like a bloopers playlist.
Okay, good.
But
okay. We need that.
But yeah,
that and mental too. The mental was an important thing because I was on the verge of having a mental breakdown in this really challenging time in the last year for me, where I was waking up with like anxiety attacks at like 3 a.m. And incorporating this was completely transformative. I won't say that I stopped having anxiety, but there was a meta study on natural on all studies that have been done assessing natural therapies for depression, and it looked at thousands of other studies. So it's a meta study analyzing thousands of other studies. It found out of hundreds of different therapies tested, 2 that were as effective statistically as antidepressant drugs, SSRIs. And one of them is actually a supplement. And the other one is cardiovascular exercise. The supplement is St. John's wort.
St. John's
wort. In case anybody's interested in that. The cardiovascular exercise, though, this should be a part of every person's life daily, period. There's no person that should not get cardiovascular exercise once each day. And and for me, it's not about the body at all. It's really not about the body at all. That was an awesome side
the older you get. It's more like
true. Yeah.
You know, it's like I don't need to look like that anymore. Like I know it's not gonna ever happen.
Yeah. Hey, come on now.
Trying to stay healthy, right? Like it really is.
We're not at that age yet. Let's give ourselves another couple of years until we're
yeah.
It's not gonna happen. Jesus, that's dark. I think, but the mind, to me, it was all about the mind. The body is like, it's a great like side benefit, but the mind effect is profound. Profound. It's a profound difference when you're doing this versus when you're not doing it. And to me, it's a foundational underpinning of all other successes that I've had and my ability to overcome challenges like the ones I've been facing in the last year.
Yeah, I think that getting that blood flowing to your brain is important too. That's probably part of it.
I think it is.
So have you been doing this? Like, okay, so have you hit a New Jersey winter morning when it's 10 degrees out? Have you gone out and done your 2-mile run? Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'll do it no matter what.
See, that's that's where I'm like, oh man, I don't know. I like the cold though. I like snow and I like the winter. So I see. Okay, I didn't know that this was going to turn into a
biohacking
podcast. Oh, there are some really good ones out there. I like listening to Broken Brain podcast. A huge shout out to them. That's a good one.
Oh, is that what's his face?
Drew Peru.
Oh no, that's not what I'm thinking of. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it's really good. The Broken Brain podcast is really good. A lot of biohacking stuff on there. They talk about intermittent fasting, and I haven't heard anyone talking about specifically this type of training, which I think I'm a huge fan of running. I try to run every day. I don't, but I haven't done like where I've integrated 2 miles in the morning with sprints. It sounds like really interesting and something I should probably start doing. That's just going to put me getting into the office that much later. I can't make it until 10 now.
Yeah, but it'll change your productivity level for the rest of the day. So
that's the thing. And that's the thing about meditation too, people. Yes. Everyone who's listening, like, oh, I can't do meditation for 20 minutes a day. It's like, well, yeah, but that's sort of like your money in the bank, right? Like you can withdraw that because you think that you can only work, 3 hours, but if you meditate, like it's almost like, I don't know, it helps my productivity. I think that anyone who, anyone should at least give it a try, right? Like, okay, maybe it's not for you, maybe you don't like it, but just see if it works, see if it's something that you can integrate. Because there's no real cost to it at the end of the day, right? Your time. But people are never going to do it. You're going to have a ton of people like, I'll never do that or whatever. But it's
the other weird thing about it is that unlike almost everything in our modern lives, it doesn't have an immediate impact. we're so used to, I pick up my phone, I open Instagram, and I feel good because I see another 20 likes on my picture.
Yeah.
I crack open my my tea, and I drink it, or my coffee. I brew my coffee, I drink it, I feel amped up within a couple minutes. Everything is instant, and the cause and effect we're used to seeing in a very short period of time. Whereas meditation, I notice the effect only when retrospectively thinking about a long span of time. So I'll meditate. When I'm done meditating, maybe I feel a little different. Maybe I don't feel that much different. But then the next day, when I think back to my productivity before and after I meditated and how that day went versus the day before that when I didn't meditate, I'll notice the difference. I'll say, wow, I got a lot more things done on my to-do list. I was more focused and less distractible and less impulsive. I was able to do things that I was procrastinating before and putting off with less fear and less projection of the negative effects of it in the future. And and you notice it only through that kind of self-aware, self-observant behavior or observation.
So I feel like people can take home a whole lot of different things from this interview.
Totally, dude. We went off the rails, and I love that.
But if anyone can take away one major thing from this interview, it's not even going to be business related. It's personal, and it's two things. Number one, try meditation, integrate it into your life. Like just try it, Second one is don't forget about Mother Nature. Get out and enjoy her and take care of her, of course. But people don't get, they stay inside and read, right? Like I love seeing my nephew out at the pond fishing. Like I love it when I'm seeing him be like a little like nature country boy, or you know what I mean? Like I think that's so important. Yeah, for people to do. And people, I don't know, I think some people are afraid of getting dirty.
Yeah.
Or sweat or something, you know what I mean? But just getting out and going for a hike. Like if you live in New York City, like go to Central Park. Central Park was built for everyone. Like that, that's why Central Park is there. They wanted a place for people of no matter what economic stature you were in, that you could enjoy nature. And so you can do that even in New York City. New York City is not an easy place to get in and out of, from my experience, but there is that little place right in the city that you can go and experience.
And if you are in New York and you can rent a car, you go upstate. Upstate New York is beautiful. It's got so many beautiful lakes, and it's a great place to escape.
Yeah, I'd love to go up in that area. I've never been up in there. But Chris, I've taken up a lot of your time today, but I want to thank you so much for this amazing interview. We've touched on some awesome things, some just practical things, some Amazon things. We've talked about general, business guidance. We talked about cash flow management. And I think one thing that's been really awesome about talking about that is you've provided some great guidance, but you've also been very transparent in like, I've struggled with this, and I think that it's one of those things that a lot of us are like, we don't want to talk about it, but it's there. And we all have this issue that as entrepreneurs, we're trying to kind of work our way through. We've talked about the importance of community and surrounding ourselves with people that know more than we do. And allowing ourselves to let go of a little bit of control so that we can work in our zone of genius. I think that's so important. And then we've talked about like kind of spiritual things, like personal, professional, and spiritual, because we've talked about meditation and, I love going into that. I think that's so important. I think it's so important that people integrate that, and they allow, like, if you have a business, like allow your employees, time to do that, like create a safe space for them to do that. I know a lot of people that that like to meditate, and they're like, I kind of like, I'm weirded out by going into the conference room because I'm afraid someone will see me, like that's your ego.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Nailed it.
Just go do it. But, if you are an employer, create a space for people to be able to do that. Right. I think that's so important. So,
yeah, I go outside my office on the grass. I just sit out on the grass outside my office.
Yeah. That's the perfect place to do it. So Chris, where can people find you and connect with you? I know that you're on Instagram, so let me know, and then I'll provide some links on the podcast as well as the YouTube so that people can find you online. So
cool. Yeah, people can. I'm a lot more active on Instagram these days. I'm definitely like, I just found that to be a great platform for me personally because I'm very visual and audio oriented. So the stories and everything, I didn't even realize the stories were getting like, that Instagram was like, taking the Snapchat route until only a couple months ago, and I like started to get back into it. But so Instagram,
I'm learning Instagram myself. So
you are? Oh, okay,
my
nice.
13-year-old niece gave me a lesson on Sunday.
Nice.
For like an hour. It was awesome.
Oh, cool. Oh, dang. She needs to give me a lesson, dude.
I know. It's like, girl, you need to charge for this. How much
Yeah, right.
She was showing me all this stuff. We did a poll.
The polling.
We're like Caesar or house salad. Like we wanted people to know, or to let us know which they prefer. That, important
nice.
like that. So
yeah, only the important stuff. The priority. Yeah, so I'm Hippie Mogul on Instagram. Okay. HIPPIEMOGUL, Hippie Mogul. So it's just instagram.com/Hippie Mogul. You can connect with me there. I'm always sharing stuff like what we talked about and just my life and connecting with people there. And yeah, so that's honestly the best place.
Awesome. We'll link to your Instagram, and Chris, I'm so grateful for you and for your brain and your advice and your time today. I don't care if you got kicked out of spelling class because I know you didn't kick out.
My biggest insecurity.
I think that the world is going to be seeing more of you, and I know that you have a ton to contribute. So thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you. I'm grateful as well. Grateful to have been able to do this podcast with you. It was beautiful and turned out to be something we didn't expect. I loved it.
Me too. You have a great one. Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone for listening to this whole thing. Now go meditate.
Yeah, good job sticking around, guys.
Yeah. If you're still here, thank you. Have a great one. Bye.
Bye, guys.